He promised $1 million if healing happens. His response left the billionaire shocked. Joe Thompson stood in his small auto shop, surrounded by the familiar chaos of greasy tools and the scent of oil. His hands, calloused from years of labor, worked methodically as he replaced an old radiator. Yet with every twist of the wrench, his mind drifted. His mother, Mary, lay at home, her breathing uneven, her smile wavering beneath the weight of her illness. The bills for her medications amassed faster than he could keep track. Each month felt like a tidal wave ready to drown them both, and a voice inside him screamed that he was failing her. He was supposed to be a doctor, a healer, but here he was, scraping by as a mechanic in a rundown town, the shadow of potential haunting his every thought. The accident that had pushed him onto this path haunted him still, a jarring memory that resurfaced every time he glanced at the stethoscope gathering dust in his garage. If only he could turn back time, if only he could help his mother. Then, the unexpected visit from Charles Blackwood shattered the routine of his days. The billionaire's smile was disarming, his proposal bewildering. $1 million, he had said, urgency in his tone. If you can demonstrate a miraculous healing for your mother through a therapy I've been researching. Joe had felt his heart race. Hope mingled with disbelief. Was it even possible? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The struggle within him exploded. Could he gamble on his mother's health, playing fast and loose with ethics for the sake of a reward? Was her life a mere contest for financial gain? The thought of her pain, the countless hours he had spent cradling her through episodes of coughing and confusion bitten through with his guilt. In that moment, the glint of possible wealth felt tarnished by his core belief that integrity should never be compromised. Regardless of the situation's desperation, as chaos enveloped his mind, images of his mother flashed her hands, frail and shaking, yet still trying to comfort him. "You've always done what was right, Joe," she'd whisper, her voice soft yet firm. He closed his eyes, but the visions of hospital rooms and heart monitors overwhelmed him. The urgency of her health was a relentless weight pressing on his chest. Then came a phone call in the dead of night that jolted him wide awake. An emergency. Her recent scare made the prospect of Charles's challenge unfold like an ominous cloud. He stood in the wooden workshop, rain pattering on the roof like a heartbeat. Charles stood across from him, eyebrows furrowed, waiting for his answer, as seconds slipped into eternity. "No," Joe finally said, voice steady but laced with emotion. "My mom is not a prize to be won." As those words hung heavy in the air, the resolve swept over him, but with it came an all-consuming fear. They were at a precipice, two starkly different worlds colliding. Would this stand for honor lead to redemption or cost him everything he cared for? The storm inside him raged, as he prepared for the storm outside. The silence that followed Joe's declaration felt heavier than the storm rumbling outside. Charles blinked once, twice, as if trying to digest the weight of Joe's words. For a fleeting moment, vulnerability crossed his face, quickly replaced by his usual calm facade. It was a transactional world they lived in, but Joe's refusal pierced through the corporate armor the billionaire wore so well. "We can help her, Charles said, his tone shifting, moving from disbelief to urgency. "Think of what can happen if you reconsider. The money isn't just a prize. It's a means to an end. Could save her." "No," Joe echoed, his voice firmer this time. "This isn't about money. It's about her life, and I won't bet it against the odds you're proposing." With that, he turned, the faint stench of oil anchoring him to the reality he preferred over the chaos Charles offered. Yet, as he walked away from the conversation, self-doubt gnawed at him. Was his integrity worth the cost of his mother's health? The images of joy he'd held in his heart, a lifetime before the accident, now felt like remnants of a dream that had slipped through his fingers. He gripped the workbench, knuckles whitening as he focused his mind. Perhaps he wasn't entirely powerless even in a life spent cleaning greasy engines. There was knowledge buried deep within him. The years in medical school hadn't just been a waste. They had ignited a passion for science and healing that he had almost forgotten. As he paced the shop, some memories drifted to the surface, the intricate details of human anatomy, the delicate balance required for effective treatments, the endless hours studying, dreaming of being a doctor. Was there still time to pull from that knowledge? The thought clawed at him, sounding more of a challenge than a plan. Joe found himself among the disarray of tools, mentally sifting through forgotten formulas, unfinished study schedules, and lessons encoded in textbooks that had long since gathered dust. What if he could explore therapy options outside of Charles's gamble? There had to be something he could grasp in the realm of possibility without sacrificing his principles. His heart raced with curiosity as he pulled out the old stethoscope, its cold metal feeling strangely familiar against his skin. It stirred something in him, a flicker of courage, of purpose. He unlocked the workshop's computer, fingers trembling with anticipation, as he searched for recent innovations in holistic medicine. It was a field he hadn't ventured into since school, but maybe its non-invasive practices could provide a glimmer of hope for his mother without compromising who he was. As search results flooded the screen, protocols and case studies detailing therapies with experimental practices, he felt a swell of determination wash over him. It was time to shift gears. The real healing might just lie in forging his own path, within a realm where he felt in control. As he delved deeper into research, Joe recognized that rebuilding his own identity as a caregiver, a healer, began with a leap of faith to challenge the accepted norms set around him. But just as he started to feel empowered, state officials flashed before his mind, doctors, protocols, and perhaps even shady operations that wielded power over legitimate therapies. Shadows loomed larger. He couldn't shake the feeling that he must tread carefully in this new territory. Then, the phone rang again, a different urgency from the earlier call, one that made hope and trepidation collide. "Joe, it's about your mom," the voice on the other line warned. He felt the weight of the world press upon him, a sudden and sharp reminder that time was a merciless adversary. The choices ahead would determine whether he remained just a mechanic or stepped into the realm of the healer he always wanted to be. Would the newfound quest toward healing carry the weight of risk or glory? With a deep breath, he steeled himself. The next step was pivotal. Would he unveil his hidden potential, or would he let fear shatter this fragile chance? As he prepared for the unknown, one question loomed larger than any he had faced before. What was he willing to sacrifice to save the woman who had always believed in him? The harsh fluorescent lights overhead flickered as Joe stared at the screen, blinking against the onslaught of information on holistic treatments. The steady rhythm of the rain drumming against the workshop window contrasted with the chaos in his mind. Choices flashed vividly before him: dissected therapies, unregulated practitioners, but amidst the clamor of uncertainty, he felt something solid forming beneath the questions. Purpose. He leaned closer to the computer, scrolling through case studies and testimonials. Names of therapies, herbs, and experimental techniques emerged, some promising extraordinary results with minimal interference on the body's natural processes. Names of researchers and practitioners, pioneers of this new frontier, started to come alive to him. Each word unveiled layers of possibility, urging him to reclaim that fervor for the medical field he had once abandoned. Yet, what haunted him were the potential risks, the ethical boundaries he could be nudging against. What right did he have to manipulate something so delicate, particularly when it came to his mother's life? The thought lingered, a merciless dialogue that countered his eagerness to progress. He had watched so many unqualified individuals peddling false hopes. He could not be one of them. The moral dilemma pressed heavily on his conscience. Was he prepared to challenge the norms, to risk everything on a chance? Hours blurred like paint smudged by rain on glass. A sudden jolt of resolution pierced through his indecision. This was about more than himself. His mother had always met the world with unwavering belief in those she cared for. The least he could do was reciprocate that faith. He began to organize his findings into a plan, a medical map for the uncharted territory he was ready to navigate. The door to the workshop swung open, revealing Jack, his childhood friend, drenched from the rain. Joe looked up, surprised yet grateful for the distraction. "You're here late," Jack noted, eyeing the clutter of papers riddled with diagrams and notes. "Just sorting through some ideas," Joe replied, glancing at his documents, not wanting to reveal too much yet fearing Jack's judgment. "Looks like more than ideas," Jack said, stepping closer, his eyebrows knitting together. "What's going on?" Joe hesitated, the weight of his ambition threatening to limit his revelation. "It's about my mom. I'm looking into alternative treatments." For a moment, Jack remained silent, digesting Joe's words. Then he shifted his stance, skepticism creeping into his expression. "Alternative? Are you sure that's the path you want to go down? You know how risky it can be." "I can't do nothing," Joe shot back, feeling his pulse quicken. "I've seen the stats, the breakthroughs. There's potential and I can't just ignore this." Jack weighed his words carefully. "Joe, confronting the big guys is one thing. But you need to consider the consequences if you fail. Is it worth the risk?" The sincerity of Jack's concern stung, digging into the precarious balance of ambition and fear swirling within Joe. He knew the stakes. Too much caution had led him to the ordinary, while too much bravado had led others to tragedy. "I know the odds are against me, but at least I'll know I tried something real, something that could work." As he spoke, an inner conviction solidified. It was a matter of principle, not only for his mother but for himself as well. He hadn't chosen this fight when turning his back on medicine, but this was the chance to reclaim his identity, to finally be the healer he had always aspired to be. "And what if you fail?" Jack pushed, the worry in his eyes pleading with Joe for caution. Joe met Jack's gaze, determination flaring in his core, refusing to back down. "Then I'll have learned how far I'm willing to go for her." Just as the tension settled between them, a series of emails landed in Joe's inbox, messages from practitioners he had reached out to earlier. Each one offered a different approach, a different pathway to explore. The dawning realization struck him with the force of thunder. He could be much more than a mechanic fixated only on engines. He was on the verge of stepping into a role where he could heal, perhaps not just his mother but others lost in their own darkness. As he opened the emails, excitement tinged with dread coursed through him. He was diving into unfamiliar waters. He took a moment to inhale, steering the decisive energy pulsing within into a clear thought. He would meet with the experts he had found, armed with documents that outlined not just treatments, but his plan to navigate the complexities of these uncharted waters. Feeling the weight of possibility on his shoulders, Joe closed the laptop, adrenaline pulsing through his veins. This abstract notion of being a healer had taken tangible form. His actions were ready to catch up with his dreams. The phone rang, and an unfamiliar number lit up the screen. The name above the digits didn't register, but a sense of urgency drummed along his pulse. He answered, heart pounding as a voice on the other end asked if he was ready for the next challenge. The next step was paramount. Would it unravel everything he had begun to build, or would it solidify his newfound purpose? He focused on the voice, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, each beat of his heart echoing the real question. What more could he risk for hope? Joe's heart raced as he listened to the voice on the other end, a mix of anticipation and anxiety surging through him. The question felt colossal. Was he ready to leap into this unpredictable world of holistic medicine? The prospect of having a conversation with someone who stood at the forefront of this field ignited a fire within him. It wasn't just a job. This was a calling. The voice introduced herself as Dr. Simmons, a well-known practitioner who had dedicated her life to merging traditional medicine with alternative therapies. The weight of her accomplishments was not lost on Joe. This was a woman who had written books, conducted groundbreaking research, and had gained respect in circles he only dreamed of entering. With each word she spoke, he felt himself inch closer to a reality he had only dared to imagine. "Joe, I see the enthusiasm in your voice. But I must warn you, this journey won't be easy. It's filled with skepticism and resistance from traditionalists, and your motivations must be crystal clear," Dr. Simmons stated firmly. It was as if she could peel back the layers of his intentions, exposing vulnerabilities he fought to disguise. "I understand the risks," Joe replied, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. But I need to do this for my mother, yes, but also for others like her. Then prepare yourself. This will require unwavering commitment. She paused, the silence on the other end heavy with implications. Are you willing to challenge the established norms? Are you ready to confront your own fears? Joe hesitated, the reality of her words sinking in. The journey he was embarking on was going to demand more than just research and interviews. It would require him to face not only the skepticism of others, but the self-doubt that had hampered him for too long. I am ready, he asserted, and the clarity of his conviction surprised even him. The fear that had dominated his thoughts began to yield to an exhilarating anticipation of purpose. Good. We'll start with your understanding of our methodologies and how we can responsibly integrate them into a care plan for your mother. It won't be straightforward, and there will be those who question your intentions or expertise. As Joe made notes, the gravity of the situation intensified. He recalled Jack's warnings, how fear had whispered loudly in his ear, urging caution and retreat. Yet, staring at his neatly organized documents, the plans he had carefully crafted, he felt a sense of empowerment filling the gaps where doubt had lingered. Dr. Simmons continued to outline the steps necessary for the initial meeting he would arrange. I need to know you can communicate this effectively to your mother. It's essential that she understands both the possibilities and the limitations of the treatments. The foundation of healing is trust, and you will be her first advocate in this journey. Her words resonated deeply. Advocacy was not merely about explaining options but about creating a safe environment for his mother's healing. He would have to equip himself with not just knowledge but empathy, understanding the emotional landscape they navigated together. In the dim light of the workshop, encased by the remnants of grease-stained tools and the sound of rain still drumming outside, Joe began to develop the approach he would take. Envisioning the conversations he would have with his mother as the call wrapped up, Joe felt the rush of adrenaline replace uncertainty with determination. From here on out, everything hinged upon his ability to execute the plan he envisioned, not just as a means of finding answers, but as a pathway that could lead him to regain control over the disarray of his life. He thought of his mother, her smile, her spirit. A promise burned steadfast in his mind, but just as clarity dawned, a new thought clawed its way into his psyche. What if his advocacy led to something greater? What if not only his mother found healing, but he discovered a latent ability to connect, to inspire belief in the potential that lay within alternative approaches? What if he could become a bridge between two worlds? His phone vibrated, a message from Dr. Simmons flashing across the screen, an invitation to a seminar on innovative practices in holistic healing. Those words felt like destiny calling him to venture even further. The sensation of impending discovery invigorated him, birthing a new kind of urgency. In the moments that followed, uncertainty transformed into a challenge he was willing to face head-on. He braced himself for the complexity of balancing scientific caution against the passion driving his purpose. This was just the beginning. The invitation on his phone was a stepping stone into the depths of an unknown world, a world where his belief could finally manifest into something tangible. As he prepared to leave the workshop, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window. There was a determination in his eyes he hadn't seen in years. But with it came that lingering question. What if he pushed too far, risking everything, even the chance of losing his mother in his pursuit of healing? Those thoughts shadowed him as he stepped out into the rain, each drop a reminder of the uncertainty that awaited. What lay ahead could reshape not just his relationship with his mother, but the very fabric of who he was becoming. The next challenge was already looming. He could feel it in the air. What awaited him at the seminar? Would he rise to the occasion, or would he falter in the face of adversity? The seminar was held in an expansive, modern space, filled with the soft hum of conversation, as attendees shuffled through brochures and exchanged ideas. Joe stepped inside, his heart a chaotic rhythm echoing the clattering of his thoughts. This was where he intended to forge an alliance with his aspirations. Yet the anticipation also shimmered with apprehension. He was guilty of feeding his insecurities the night before. Doubts crowded his mind. What if no one took him seriously? What if he couldn't grasp the intricacies of the methodologies discussed? Dr. Simmons had urged him not to get lost in the attendees' skepticism but to understand that knowledge resides in questioning. Today was his chance to test that belief. Shifting his focus to the speakers, he observed their fluid interactions. They exuded authority and clarity, traits he envied. Each expert confidently unveiled their insights, sharing their successes and failures, highlighting why embracing an integrative approach is essential. Joe found a small group gathered around a presentation titled, "Healing Beyond Boundaries: The Power of Alternative Therapies." He squeezed through the crowd, trying to absorb every word. Their language was steeped in passion and conviction. He sensed there was a narrative behind each statistic. But the longer he listened, the more he wrestled with the old self-doubt that had plagued him for years. What could he possibly contribute to this ever-evolving discourse? He took a step back to gather his thoughts. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with ambition. As he glanced around, he recognized faces people who had dedicated their lives to this field. They were seasoned practitioners, researchers, and advocates, people who had pulled themselves from the depths of skepticism to advocate for healing in ways conventional medicine had dismissed. Joe's breath caught in his throat when he considered that perhaps he belonged there too. Coming to this realization was profound, yet it also came with a fresh wave of fear. What if embarking on this path meant his whole life would change? Was he prepared to sacrifice the familiar comforts of his old life? The staff at the seminar generated an undercurrent of encouragement, each shared story sparking a flicker of audacity. Embracing that, he silently committed to approaching the podium, looking for opportunities to insert himself into conversations, to lend his voice to the collective advocacy they represented. By the time lunch was served, Joe approached Dr. Simmons, determined to ask her something he had kept simmering in his mind. How do you bridge the gap between traditional medical practitioners and alternative therapists? He ventured, feeling the words shape his vision. Dr. Simmons regarded him thoughtfully. By leading with your story, Joe. When you can articulate your motivation and personal connection, others will listen. Your experience with your mother is not just a background, it's the heart of your advocacy. With clarity washing over him, Joe realized the moment wasn't only about learning, it was about stepping firmly into a role he desperately wanted to claim. An advocate for his mother and others battling similar health challenges. The weight of responsibility settled upon his shoulders, but, surprisingly, he felt strong enough to bear it. With renewed determination, he also took note of a panel discussion titled "Confronting Financial Barriers in Holistic Healing." As the conversation unfolded, Joe started to catalog potential partnerships and funding strategies that could elevate his mission. These discussions were terracotta bricks, building something he hadn't yet fully imagined. But the blueprint was beginning to take shape. By the closing remarks, the seminar had transformed him. He felt a burgeoning sense of purpose, a desire not just to advocate for healing options but also to bring about tangible changes in how therapeutic suggestions were made and how narratives surrounding them could shift. He began to see himself as a connector, someone who could unify the best aspects of both worlds for those desperately seeking relief. However, an unexpected voice interrupted his thoughts. An older gentleman, sharp-eyed and imposing, approached him during the final Q&A session. He posed a challenge. What if you had $1 million to spend on a project of your choosing? What would you do? How would you heal those who are suffering? Joe's pulse quickened. The question hit home. It was an opportunity that could either propel him into the spotlight or expose him as a fraud standing on shaky ground. He hesitated momentarily, assessing the daunting expectations layered within that simple hypothetical. Would he dare to answer from his heart? Would he risk it all to advocate for real change, or would he retreat into the shadows of doubt once more? With the collective gaze shifting onto him, the weight of the room loomed heavily. This was the moment he had anticipated, yet it also felt suffocating. Could he muster the courage to rise and articulate his vision? His next words would define not just this moment but the entire direction of his journey. The stage was set, and the stakes had never felt higher. The question hung in the air like an uninvited guest, daring Joe to respond. He swallowed hard, conscious of every gaze trained upon him. His mind raced as he grappled with the weight of the inquiry. $1 million. The amount was staggering, But his response needed to convey more than just a financial plan. It had to resonate with the very purpose he was beginning to understand. He inhaled deeply. If I had $1 million, Joe began, feeling the tremor in his voice, I would create a network that connects alternative therapies with traditional care. My mother's journey through treatment showed me that too often, patients face a confusing landscape of choices and contradictions. They need to have access to all forms of healing without navigating opposing worlds. He focused on the gentleman, seeing the flicker of intrigue in his eyes. The goal would be to develop a resource center where patients can easily access information about various healing modalities, therapy options, nutritional guidance, emotional support groups. We would host workshops to educate practitioners from both disciplines on how to collaboratively create healing strategies tailored to individual needs. Taking a moment, he glanced at his peers, seeing nods of encouragement. This project could ensure that anyone seeking help feels empowered and informed, not isolated in their choice of treatment. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. He felt their energy shift. As adrenaline surged through him, he realized he was no longer speaking just to answer a question. He was sharing a vision, a lifeline that could help others like his mother. You want to heal suffering by uniting knowledge and compassion. It's brilliant, the gentleman said, clearly impressed. But how will you fund it? We can't just rely on $1 million. Joe faltered at that challenge. Reality crashed into his idealism. I'd seek partnerships with health organizations, apply for grants, and leverage crowdfunding. Each proposal he shared fueled his resolve, allowing him to outline how he could establish a foundation grounded in community support. The gentleman raised an eyebrow, clearly considering the feasibility of Joe's plan. And what will be your role in all of this? Joe felt the weight of that question. It pressed against the very core of his self-doubt. I will be the storyteller, he replied, channeling the inspiration Dr. Simmons had instilled in him. By sharing my journey, and those of others, I can connect people on an emotional level. That's how we build trust and break down barriers. The audience responded with a raw energy. Whispers floated in the room. Joe's heart raced, electrified by a sense of acceptance and possibility. Had he just stepped from the shadows of his insecurities into a space where his voice mattered? As the session concluded, the gentleman leaned closer, his eyes sharp. Interesting ideas, but it won't be easy. The skeptics will challenge you. Joe nodded, the fire of ambition igniting in his belly. I understand that, but facing skepticism is part of this journey. I'm ready to confront it. No longer was he just an observer at the seminar. He was presently evolving into an advocate, a bridge between worlds. Each revelation shaped a conviction in him that advocacy wasn't simply about battling norms. It was about infusing hope with action. As he walked through the now thinning crowd of attendees, Joe's pulse gradually slowed, but his mind raced with reflections on what he had just articulated. He had stepped into his power, yet questions lingered. What would his first steps be upon returning home? How would he navigate the inevitable obstacles that lay ahead? But another thought seized him, a voice challenging his newfound resolve. Could he truly bear the responsibility that came with leading his vision? The lingering seed of doubt threatened to sprout once again. With the challenge set before him and his steps weighted by uncertainty, Joe knew he was on the precipice of something significant. He needed to confront his vulnerability, not hide from it. That was the painful yet beautiful essence of true advocacy. The real test awaited, the unknown beckoning as he was about to embark on a journey ripe with both peril and potential. What lay ahead would define him not just as a challenger of the status quo but as a creator of change. The moment was fragile, but it imbued him with purpose. He took a deep breath, ready to step into the chaos of what came next. The journey was just beginning, and he had no idea how everything would unfold. Would he face the critics with the courage he had discovered, or would insecurities claw at him once again? The weight of obligation hung heavily on Joe's shoulders as he stepped into his modest apartment, the echoes of applause from the seminar still reverberating in his mind. It was a clamor for change, filled with potential. Yet, as memories of the night's exchanges lingered in his mind, so too did shadows of doubt. Each echo felt like a specter whispering his limitations. He slumped onto his worn-out couch, the fabric soft yet ill-fitting, much like his current life. As he stared out of the window at the darkening skyline, his thoughts circled wildly. Could he truly weave the threads of alternative and traditional medicine into a cohesive tapestry? Questions buzzed in his head, intensifying the internal rumble between ambition and insecurity. He felt small against the enormity of the task ahead. A glimmer of optimism flickered. Taking out his notebook, he opened to a blank page, pen poised. His breath quickened as he recalled the gentleman's probing questions. What will your role be? The answer had felt empowering in the moment, but now, as the self-doubt wormed its way back in, he struggled to figure out the logistics of it all. I will be the storyteller, he scribbled, determined to encapsulate the essence of what he wanted to achieve. But a mere title wouldn't suffice. He needed actionable steps. What type of stories would resonate? Whose experiences would he share? As visions of potent narratives began to fill his mind, Joe recognized these weren't just personal. They were representative and emblem of collective struggles and triumphs. The pen began to move, sketching out initial plans, a roadmap of empowerment, supported by anecdotes of healing. Yet, deep down, he felt the creeping fear of inadequacy rising within him. Am I worthy of this role? The question clawed at his thoughts, sharper than any critique he might receive from outside skeptics. With a fierce grip on his pen, Joe scrawled another line in his notebook. My journey is valid. He had to believe that. The phone's ring jolted him. It was his sister, a bolstering presence in his life. Hey Joe, just wanted to check in, she chirped, inadvertently easing the tension in his chest. How did the seminar go? Feeling the anxious weight lift slightly, he recounted the critical moments, focusing on his vision for a healing network. Her excitement was palpable over the phone. You care so much. That's what people need, someone who believes in possibilities. As he engaged with her enthusiasm, the ember of determination began to spark within him again. I need to figure out how to reach out to practitioners. I want to frame workshops and reach out to patients, he confessed, galvanizing himself with each word. Then do it, she encouraged. You've got $1 million plan to create, so what's stopping you? Her fearless support ignited a cascade of resolve within him, and for the first time since the seminar, he felt the boundaries of his resolve expand. Instead of drowning in insecurities, he could utilize his perceived limitations as a launchpad for growth. Embracing the challenge meant confronting not just external criticisms, but also the internal barriers he'd constructed around himself. He hesitated, sensing a shift. This wasn't merely about funding or partnerships, it was about belief in himself, an acknowledgement of his worth in this new role. Next step, I'll identify practitioners who share this vision, he proclaimed, a newfound conviction threading through his thoughts. But just as momentum was building, a darker voice cautioned. What if they reject you? What if they don't see the value in your approach? It was a question dripping with the threat of vulnerability, a reminder of obstacles that could daunt even the most steadfast spirit. With a heavy exhale, Joe clenched his fingers around the pen, then released it. The tension between his ambition and fears was tangible, a shape-shifting force threatening to consume his clarity. Would he cower from the reality of opposing views, or would he rise through the skepticism surrounding him? The clock ticked softly, suggesting time was his ally, but urgency thrashed within him. He would have to dive deeper into this world, confront its nuances, and stand firm amid contradiction. As he prepared to take the first step toward contacting practitioners, he felt the electric pulse of possibility race through him, but something loomed just out of reach. Would he be able to communicate his vision effectively and rally support? Determined not to back down, Joe picked up his phone. Yet another question taunted him persistently. Was he ready to engage with those who would challenge his beliefs? It was a crossroads, one that required clarity, and he was about to enter a realm where the power of his commitment to the truth would ultimately be tested. Would the ensuing conversations offer clarity, or would they plunge him deeper into doubt? As dawn stretched its fingers across the skyline, Joe woke with a sense of urgency that pulsed in his veins. The challenges of the day loomed over him like a storm cloud, but beneath the apprehension vibrated a determined undercurrent. Today marked the beginning of outreach, a crucial first step in transforming his hazy ambitions into tangible action. He paced the small kitchen, the aroma of brewing coffee mingling with his anxious thoughts. Each sip was both a moment of clarity and a ritual of contemplation. He recalled the faces of the practitioners he had met, their passion igniting his own during the seminar. How could he harness their fire and draw them into his vision? He flipped through notes filled with names and ideas, feeling the weight of that first phone call deep in his gut. Calling a respected healer seemed monumental, like stepping into the lion's den. Yet he jotted down affirmations in his notebook, focusing on the positive narratives he wanted to share. Trust in the power of stories, he scribbled. It was becoming a mantra of sorts as he crafted a roadmap for his outreach. With clarity building in his mind, he selected his first target, Dr. Sarah Liu, a pioneering herbalist known for merging ancient wisdom with modern practices. The thought of her reviewing his proposal both excited and terrified him. Would she embrace his vision or dismiss it as impractical? Joe lingered a moment longer in his routine, the mundane comfort of his surroundings battling the rising tide of ambition. The pen felt heavy in his hand as he prepared to dial. It was now or never. Heart racing, he lifted the receiver. The ring echoed like a countdown, and he practiced a short introduction in his mind. But then, self-doubt crept in, whispering taunts. What if Dr. Liu thought he was a fraud? What if he stammered? With a deep inhale, he steadied himself. It's just a conversation, he reminded himself. One that could change everything. When her voice finally came through the line, it was warm and inviting, everything he hoped for. After a few pleasantries, Joe steered the discussion to his vision of interconnecting narratives of healing. He spoke passionately, monitoring her reactions. Halfway through, her initial curiosity shifted to intrigue. Why do you think a blend of traditional and alternative methods matters? She inquired, keenly assessing. The question sliced through his confidence. This was it, the moment of reckoning. He focused on authenticity, sharing his own experiences with alternative healing and the gaps he perceived in traditional practices. As he articulated his thoughts, he caught the light in her voice shift. The more he spoke, the more animated the conversation became. Something remarkable was unfolding. This was collaboration instead of confrontation. As they wrapped up, Dr. Liu expressed interest in exploring this further. The tide of hope washed over Joe. He was forging connections. Bolstered by his success, he reviewed notes from the call as a plan began to solidify for his next outreach. However, self-skepticism remained. That was one conversation. What if others aren't as receptive? Shadows lurked again, threatening to diminish his momentum. But he couldn't afford to dwell. This was not merely about securing practitioners. It was about shifting the paradigm, a battle against that inner critic who had long cast doubt on his abilities. Whether the next call would be a setback or a step forward loomed ominously in Joe's mind. Yet there was a fire ignited. He envisioned a workshop collaboration, a space where ideas could flourish. Could I bring practitioners together? He pondered, their combined talents elevating his vision beyond his own capabilities. As he stared at the empty pages in his notebook, filled only with possibilities, he felt a swell of purpose. The path ahead could be fraught with challenges, yet something deep within him heaved a sigh of relief, feeling less confined by fear and more driven by purpose. Yet, there was still a storm gathering. Not everyone would align with his views. The question lingered ominously: who would challenge him next? With renewed focus, he began strategizing contacts for practitioners. The emotional weight of potential regret pushed him onwards. Would his next conversation open doors, or would it confront him with stark realizations of his limits? Joe hesitated one last moment, poised between action and fear, ready to leap forward into the unknown. A knot of expectation tightened in his throat. The stakes were real. What awaited him beyond the horizon of doubt? The day blurred into a whirlwind of activity as Joe bolstered his resolve for the next call. He had found himself engulfed in a frenetic energy, driven by the undeniable pulse of purpose. The flicker of possibility grew brighter as he reached for his list again, scanning it for names that danced through his mind. Staring at the name of Dr. Ethan Roth, a controversial figure in integrative medicine, Joe felt both a thrill and a shiver. Dr. Roth was known for pushing boundaries and challenging the very essence of traditional paradigms. The prospect of reaching out sent a cascade of anxieties tumbling through him. What if he laughs me off? Failed to settle quiet in his heart. This was no ordinary call. This was a potential turning point. Abandoning his hesitation, Joe poured another cup of coffee, reminding himself that discomfort often signaled growth. He stood by the window, staring out at the city below. The incessant honking and bustling people served as a reminder of the world swirling outside his small bubble of introspection. The cacophony felt overwhelming, yet there was a component he identified with. Even the thriving city was enveloped in uncertainty, navigating its chaos. With resolve pushing him past his fears, he grabbed the phone again, the weight of the device grounding him in the moment. The first ring reverberated like the start of a race. His heart hammered. Each tone seemed to echo the contrast between the intense fear of failure and the hope that whispered there was something exceptional waiting to emerge. Dr. Roth's office. A terse voice interrupted his thoughts. "Hello, this is Joe Fisher. I'm hoping to speak with Dr. Roth regarding collaborative potential in healing narratives." He sensed his voice tremble, betraying an inner tempest. "Please hold." The coolness of the line contrasted sharply with the heat of anxiety simmering inside him. A churning mix of anticipation and doubt tightened his chest. What could Dr. Roth offer? Would he dismiss Joe's ambitions outright, or would he find merit in exploring the confluence of their visions? When Dr. Roth's voice finally resonated through the receiver, Joe was surprised by its level of vitality. It was both engaging and potent, immediately disarming Joe's nerves. "Joe, I've seen your work," Dr. Roth declared, and Joe could barely contain his shock. "I'm intrigued. So what's this about healing narratives?" With the rush of adrenaline surging through him, Joe launched into an impassioned description of his vision, framing his concepts with the elegance of a story. He caught the shifting tones in Dr. Roth's voice, and it bolstered his confidence. The energy rippled between them as if the air had become charged with potential. Yet it was Dr. Roth's provocative follow-up that took Joe off guard. "And what if I put $1 million on the line for this? If real healing happens, are you ready to stake your credibility?" The proposition hung in the air like a dense fog. Joe felt his stomach drop, the weight of the question yanking him back into the real world. It sounded like a challenge, a call to prove not just himself but his ideas. It wasn't merely about vision anymore, but about opportunity and the potential for monumental impact. But rising to such a challenge threatened to expose everything he feared about failure. "Are you willing to risk everything?" Dr. Roth pressed, almost teasing. Joe sensed the gravity behind the casual tone, and doubt bubbled like boiling water, but beneath it, the flicker of determination sparked anew. Silence enveloped him as he placed a finger against his temple, contemplating the turning point before him. The stakes had risen. The notion of healing through storytelling now pivoted from an abstract concept to the very real potential of funding and visibility. Would he turn away, or would he seize this moment, a moment that demanded not only belief in his ideas but also a leap of faith into the unknown? As he struggled to find the words, images of what it meant to contribute to healing flooded his mind. Relationships built, lives changed, stories forged together. Time slipped away as he confronted his own trepidation, waiting just a bit too long for his response. "Dr. Roth, I'm in." But the echoes of that bold statement already weighed heavily, and he was acutely aware that the next chapter in his journey had just begun. What challenges would this commitment bring? Would he triumph? Or would the truths about his limits emerge in stark clarity? All eyes would now be pointed directly at him, and this time, the spotlight wouldn't fade quietly. In the ensuing weeks, Joe Thompson underwent a profound transformation that surpassed his wildest expectations. With the $1 million promise from Dr. Roth motivating him, he dove deep into his vision of merging traditional and alternative healing practices. Every waking moment was consumed by meticulous research, networking with top practitioners, and drafting a business proposal that held the potential to reshape healthcare. Joe's meticulous efforts started paying off. The blend of validated holistic therapies with modern medicine began to draw attention. He secured meetings with renowned experts in both fields, crafting a narrative that spoke not only to the mind but to the heart. Each conversation was a chance to advocate for merging these disparate realms into a healing network, and each nod of agreement added a layer of confidence to his evolving identity as a healer. Yet the most significant growth was internal. Each success, no matter how small, fortified his resolve and diminished the specter of self-doubt that had haunted him for years. When Joe looked in the mirror, he no longer saw a man grappling with regret. He saw a healer emerging, armed with a fervor that sparked when he thought of his mother. He soon organized a workshop entitled Bridging Paradigms, inviting both traditional medical practitioners and alternative medicine advocates. The day of the workshop arrived, buzzing with anticipation and a hint of trepidation. As he stood before a diverse audience, he remembered the broken mechanic struggling with his mother's illness and the impossible choices he faced. The contrast astonished him. The room pulsed with potential, and as he spoke passionately about his journey, both the struggle and the triumph, he noticed the rapt attention in their eyes. Every story matters, and that is why we are here today, he declared, his voice unwavering. It is time we shifted the narrative of healing. Together, we can create a network that empowers patients to choose their paths, free from stigma and confusion. The applause that followed felt like validation, a testament to his growth. Joe had transitioned from a man burdened by past mistakes to a recognized pioneer in healthcare innovation, emerging as an authentic voice for the healing community. Validation came swiftly when Dr. Roth publicly endorsed his project, initiating collaborations that transformed his vision into a functional resource center. Not only did Joe excel in integrating holistic therapies with medicinal approaches, but he was invited to present at health conferences nationwide. Each panel was a stage where he could shine, leading discussions on reimagining patient care. The moment of personal achievement crystallized when he received an award for Innovator of the Year in Integrative Healthcare, marking a poignant acknowledgement of his achievements. Standing on that stage, he looked out into the crowd filled with familiar faces: practitioners, patients, stakeholders who believed him, and most importantly, his mother whose fight inspired him. Joe had conquered not just professional barriers. He had dismantled the limitations he had imposed on himself. The fear that once held him captive had transformed into a powerful driving force. He had become the storyteller he aspired to be, advocating not only for his mother's health but also for the health of countless others in a system designed to sometimes overlook them. This metamorphosis was complete, solidifying his new role in life. Joe stood confidently as a visionary in the healing profession, reshaping a narrative that generations would follow. Through resilience and self-discovery, he had reclaimed his purpose and carved out a significant place in the world of healing. He had proven that healing begins not only in practice but in stories that connect and empower. And with each small victory, he understood. The real legacy he wanted to leave was one of hope and courage for anyone seeking the path from doubt to healing. Now, as this chapter concludes, take a moment to reflect on your own journey. You need to subscribe now to the channel and not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these transformative stories reach those who need inspiration. Comment below your reactions and theories about how Joe's journey inspired you. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, let us spread the message that healing and hope can emerge from even the most desperate of circumstances.